Hello everybody, you have tuned in to Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover virtually any aspect of making a murderer. I go over the evidence, the documents, the photos. So if you like, stay tuned, and in the future I'll have many more videos besides the one you're about to see. Alright, hello folks, we're back here today to talk a little bit about the state's response to Zellner's filing for an evidentiary hearing and that the CD is a Brady violation and all that sort of stuff. So the state is now offering their argument as to why that is not the case. And here's the opening paragraph. So we'll just jump on in here. On June 7th of 2018, the Court of Appeals entered a remand order to permit the defendant the opportunity to pursue a supplemental post-conviction motion. The remand order is quite specific as to the subject matter to be addressed by the Circuit Court. The defendant claims that a CD contains exculpatory information. Based upon that contention, the Court of Appeals crystallized the issue for litigation in its remand when it stated that Avery alleges that the CD contains exculpatory material evidence and that the state's failure to disclose the CD earlier violates his due process right in a fair trial under Brady v. Maryland. The remand order is limited to the information on the CD received from the state. Legal arguments pertaining to newly discovered evidence and ineffective assistance of counsel are not envisioned by the remand order. Nevertheless, we will briefly address those issues if we have misconstrued the scope. So what the state is basically getting at here is basically they're setting up for their argument of, number one, the 7 DVDs were handed over, and Detective Fassbender's report about the CDs and the CD and the DVDs was also turned over. Well, as Kathleen Zellner has already pointed out, Tom Fassbender's report was whitewashing the hell out of it. So it's hard to take that really very seriously. Anyway, so there's a few other things that I'm going to go ahead and show you as we go through here. One, I want everybody to pay special attention to here, alright? Just want you to know that by May of 2006, Dean and Jerry were already Stephen's lawyers. What I'm going to show you next is when Detective Veely finished his forensic review of the Dassey computer and when the state finally got around to turning that stuff over to the defense. So just kind of look out for that and pay attention to the gap between those dates. On May 10th of 2006, Detective Veely completed his analysis and returned the Dassey computer to Fassbender on May 11th of 2006 with a copy of the Veely CD and the 7 DVDs containing a forensic image copy of the hard drive from the Dassey computer. On December 7th of 2006, now keep in mind the DVDs don't sound like there's much there of a report or anything to point anybody in any particular direction. They just sound like they're a copy of the drive, and you would have to literally go through it strand by strand or needle, just literally step by step or file by file and folder by folder. To even know what you're even looking for, if there was even anything there to find. So those DVDs, but we haven't even discussed when the DVDs were handed over yet. So, but we know the CD was held back. Then on December 7th, Fassbender prepared an investigative report number 304 detailing the seizure of the Dassey computer, the transport of the Dassey computer to Grand Chute Police Department, and the information he received from Detective Veely pertaining to the forensic analysis. As far as I know, they weren't given. I've heard nothing about them being given the information. I'm assuming that that's supposed to be the notes or something like that. The only thing that I can see they were given was, yes, there was a report written by Tom Fassbender that was extremely whitewashing what was on that computer. And then later on, that's when they finally hand the DVDs over. But take a look, folks. When Fassbender finally files a report about this computer, You see this, right? December 2006. Okay, you see this when he got it back from Detective Veely, right? May 10th. Okay? They had this thing for 5 months. Did it take the state 5 months to analyze Detective Veely's, analysis? Because it took them a long time to hand it over to Dean and Jerry. Because the honest truth of it is, they didn't hand the DVDs over until the 19th of December. And we all know what happens in December, right, folks? It's a busy month, isn't it? Pretty hectic. So, the state had this for 5 months, 6 months, over 6 months, and then finally turned it over literally a month before Denny's due, and literally right before the holidays. You're going to tell me that that's not on purpose? That's not meant to try to prevent the defense from really, digging in and finding out what was on those DVDs and all that stuff? I mean, yeah, quite amazing, really. But we're going to move on to some of the other fishy stuff here. Okay, I just want to remind everybody here. This is a brief from the state. This is the state talking here. This is not Zellner putting things together in a way. This is actually the state itself and how it's explaining things here. Now, once again, I want to point out, here they are putting the dates right next to each other. During the course of the 17 days, the Detective Veely completed the forensic analysis of the DASI computer between April 24, 2006 to May 10th of 2006. May 10th. The prosecution had everything done and completed on May 10th. The whole thing. The report, the DVDs, the CD, any accompanying paperwork, all of it, they had on May 10th. It's kind of, right around mid-May, right? Which is the 5th month. So, the first thing that gets mentioned is on December 7th. Tom Fassbender writes a report, and then here's the interesting thing about that report right here. It explains just how easy it was for Dean and Jerry to find this report if they wanted. By letter dated December 14th of 2006, Calumet County District Attorney and Manitowoc County Special Prosecutor Kenneth Kratz mailed additional discovery information to Attorney Dean Strang, one of Mr. Avery's trial attorneys. Exhibit 3, itemized discovery list. Item 67 refers to various DCI investigative reports, one of which was the Fassbender report. Oh, it was that easy to find? Oh, wow. It's no wonder they... how could they have missed that? Wow. Dang it. Are you kidding me? Item 67 refers to various DCI investigative reports, and just one of those various reports happens to be the Fassbender report? Oh, good grief. Like I said, you got all this shenanigans going on. I mean, and here is the state putting the dates right next to each other. I mean, they're making it easy for me. So, yeah. This is bizarre, and I just... It's amazing to me that they're floating that. They're trying to float that as an excuse. Oh yeah, item 67 refers to various investigative reports, one of which is the Fassbender report. I mean, come on. So yeah, it's bizarre. So let's move on to the next bit. Thus, the defendants claim that the Veely CD now provides the only missing piece, that is, motive, is incorrect. The defendant has failed to establish a relevant motive as it relates to Bobby Dassey, because he has failed to establish how Bobby Dassey was motivated by his alleged use of pornography to murder Teresa Halbach. He has also failed to establish how Bobby Dassey had an opportunity to commit the crime. As noted above, opportunity was assumed for argument purposes, but never proved. Okay. Alright. The defendant has... failed to establish a relevant motive, and then how did they put it here? To establish how Bobby Dassey was motivated by his alleged use of pornography to murder Teresa Halbach. Okay, once again, talking about the way that Tom Fassbender whitewashed his report, that's very similar to what's happening here. It wasn't just pornography. It was not just pornography. That description is woefully inept. Woefully. What was on there were a lot of pictures of girls that looked like Teresa that were being, you know, harmed or injured. A lot of decapitated heads, and like it said in the reports from Zellner's, you know, expert, that you know, fair amount of them resembled Teresa Halbach. Then there was the violent sex porn, and then the mutilation stuff. All this stuff together, as I said before, is kind of a trifecta. It's disturbing that this stuff was all together on the Dassey computer, I can tell you that. And somebody should be figuring out how it got there, why it was there, and who was responsible for it getting there. Instead of arguing, you know that Zellner needs to basically do their job for him. Well, here, let's move on to that, where they basically start arguing that Zellner needs to do their whole entire job for him. But similarly, the defendant has failed to establish a direct connection between Bobby Dassey and the murder of Teresa Halbach. Nowhere in his pleading does he tell us how Bobby Dassey killed Teresa Halbach, where he killed her, when he killed her, whether he really was assisted by Scott Taddick, or point to any evidence in the record that would support any of these allegations. Saying so doesn't make it so. There is no direct evidence beyond speculative conjecture. His pleading is woefully deficient. State versus Allen, Supra, and such does not call for a hearing, let alone undermine the outcome of the let alone undermine the outcome required by Brady. Now, see, this is where, you see what I'm talking about right here. They're basically saying, yes, Zellner needs to do our job for us. She needs to go and investigate this and find out, all this stuff that we failed to investigate 13 years ago, because, that's her job. Basically. And I guarantee you we're going to see a tweet from Zellner telling us how it's not her job. Because I know I've seen a couple of tweets from her recently where she basically tells people that it's not her job to do that. She can point at things, she can, put up whatever evidence she finds and point at things, but it's not her job to bring these people to justice. Her job is to defend her client and represent her client. And that does not involve catching the killer for a lazy prosecution. The pornography on the Dassey computer would have had no effect on the jury's verdict. We'll come back to that. But most importantly, the entire contents of the Dassey computer, including the pornography, were provided to the defendant 7 weeks before trial. Thus, his arguments regarding the potential use of pornography are irrelevant to the Brady claim. Okay, whoa, where do we start there? Number one, may have been 7 weeks before trial, but the Fassbender report wasn't available until 1 month before Brady was due. By the state's own record here, it was December 14th before Kratt sent an itemized list which referenced various DCI investigation reports, and of those various reports, one of them happened to be Fassbender's. So we have that on the 14th, which is, about 3 weeks before Denny's due. And then we have the 7 DVDs being sent over to Dean Strang, and on the 19th, Dean Strang's office is sending those DVDs over to Jerry Buting's office. And yeah, so they get these DVDs right before the Christmas holidays, when they basically have now about 18 days to go over it and look through it and whatever. So it's obvious that the prosecution was playing games here, and the more I read this and the more it's just so, the arguments here seem so ridiculous, but obviously they're using law to back up their argument, and who knows what's going to happen here. But it's absolutely just amazing that they can somehow convince themselves that what was on that computer didn't matter. Because I guarantee you, trust me, If the jury would have known about what was on that computer and who was at home most of the time when that stuff was being accessed, they would have had a lot more doubts about Bobby, because we all know that the jury, when they were in deliberations, asked for Bobby's testimony. It was the only thing they asked for. They asked for all of it. And Judge Willis said, well, not all of it. Can you tell us what portion of it you want, basically? And they ended up dropping it and just letting, not even asking for anything at all. So I don't know why they didn't just hand it over. I mean, they're the jury. They're trying to make an informed decision, and they had some doubt and some questions. But yeah, just another stupid, weird thing with this case. But anyway, but we know that the jury had some queries in terms of Bobby. I'm sure that those queries would have gotten amplified if they knew about that. And that would have taken, and like I said, if Dean Strang and Jerry Beadham were able to get Bobby to meet Denny, then he really wouldn't have been able to be a star witness for the prosecution, putting, who's claiming that Teresa was still at the salvage yard when he left, and that sort of thing. Without that, how strong is the case that the state has against Avery? I mean, it's just, you whittle away at all these things over time, like the key, which is obviously planted, and the fact that there's no proof of any of these things that they claim happened in the bedroom or really even in the garage. Just so many things about the case. But anyway, like I said, I think the jury had doubts, and I think that if the jury knew about what was on the computer, that it would have had an effect on them. And the reason I believe that is because they asked for Bobby's testimony when they were in deliberation. So it's really just a bunch of the state, claiming that the CD is not new evidence, that it wasn't suppressed, it wasn't obstructed or anything like that. I mean, that's just a bunch of it's just a load of hooey. Why did you sit on it for 6 months and then suddenly start trying to, turning it over tentatively here and there, a report here, and then an itemized inventory list of where that report is, and on this day, and then the seven DVDs come another week after that, and this whole game being played in the month leading up to the deadline for Denny. I mean, come on. You're trying to tell me that wasn't done on purpose? You're trying to tell me that doesn't show clear intent by the state to obscure and hide? And yeah, it's ridiculous. These guys should be ashamed of themselves, and the fact that they're still here defending this crap, is just amazing to me. So that's about that. That's pretty much wraps it up for the state's filing here, folks. As you can see, there's our cast and crew. Norm Gahn still there, Mr. Fallon, all that. Mark S. Williams down here. Obviously, the replacement for the King Kratz. Anyway, so that's about it, folks. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll talk to you.